Okay, scrotal swellings is our next lecture that we will start. Important thing is it is one of the condition in which history is very beneficial in reaching the working diagnosis. Your history taking is, you can say, the best modality of diagnosis in these cases. So when you take a history of such a patient with a scrotal swelling, you should be very clear about the onset, how it developed, what was the onset, what is the duration of the swelling to develop, whole duration, what is the position change in the swelling, in lying down or in standing, or in different postures, what is the variation, associated complaints of pain, other swellings in the abdomen or in the inguinal region, symptoms of lower urinary tract involvement, association with lifting, like in cases of hernias. Hernias may present with the inguinal swelling. So any history of weightlifting or any history of any condition that causes increased abdominal pressure. And then constitutional symptoms like fever, malaise, weight loss. So you have to take a very detailed history to keeping all the differentials in mind, so that you can come across a single working diagnosis at the end. Physical examination is also very important. Just like we do the examination of any swelling, size of the swelling, site size, surface, its consistency, its tenderness, whether it is tender or not, the superficial signs of inflammation on that swelling, any discharge from the urethral orifice or from some opening on that swelling. Examination of the testes. Are the testes separately palpable or not? Or they are, the swelling appears to be fixed from the testes. The swelling is itself of the testes. So you have to see the testes are separately palpable or not. Then can you get above the swelling? To differentiate specifically between scrotal swellings and inguinoscrotal swellings. Then if it is inguinoscrotal swelling, the swelling is coming from up. What is the effect of the cough impulse, is positive or not? Transillumination in swellings that consist to be cystic, that appears to be cystic, and cremostatic reflex in semictopic testes or conditions. Now, the common causes of swelling in the scrotal region, they can be testicular torsion, epididymitis, orchitis, torsion of the appendicular testes, testicular masses or tumors, hydrocele, spermatocele, varicocele, or even testicular rupture secondary to trauma, and may produce a hematocele. Now, causes can be acute or chronic. Acute causes can be torsion. Torsion can be of the testis itself, or it could be torsion of the appendicular testis, a small appendage that is present on one side of the testis, and it appears as a blue dot when we do the physical examination. The whole testis is not enlarged, but there is a blue dot on the on one side that gives us the clue in the mind that it is torsion of the appendicular testis. Then acute epididymitis or acute epidydymorchitis, mump orchitis, Hinosh-Schönlein purpura, trauma, insect bites, thrombosis of the veins, fat necrosis secondary to trauma, hernias, folliculitis, and dermatitis. Chronic conditions that are present for long, not of acute sudden onset. They could be hydrocele, hernias, varicocele, spermatocele, skin conditions like sebaceous cyst, and painless tumors. And acute and chronic conditions, they also differ in presentation as well as on the symptoms. Acute presentations usually have acute symptoms too. They are associated with pain usually, but in chronic, usually the conditions are painless. Anyone remembers how we discussed the difference between epididymitis and testicular torsion, how they appear and how they differ from each other? What are the things that are alike and what are the things that are different? Testicular torsion and epidydymorchitis or epididymitis.
Torsion, sudden, severe pain.
Okay, in both there may be a sudden severe pain. Epidydymorchitis. Okay.
One with torsion will cry.
I can't hear you. Who is this? Speak loudly, please.
testicles, the one with torture will cry.
And the one with epididymitis will not cry?
He will
Where I use this word cry? Where I use this word cry? Is it Saud al-Yabis?
Yes, Saud al-Yabis, Doctor.
MashaAllah, I remember you said this yesterday and you said the same today. I said it is prehensile.
And the position, Doctor, of course, it's going to be horizontal, raised. But this one, the crying one, it was special.
Position is important. The testicular torsion, testis is slightly elevated and it is horizontally placed. But both can present as swelling, both can present as severe acute pain. And the sign he is saying that patient cries when you elevate the testis. When you elevate the testis, further elevation causes a patient with testicular torsion to get more pain. While the patient with epididymitis, he gets some relaxation from the pain. So that's why we give scrotal support to patient with epididymitis, but for testicular torsion, we have to do something in emergency because there is a problem with the blood supply. And if we don't work in time, there may be non-viable testes then. So you have to be very careful while you are examining. We do a Doppler also, but when you are waiting for the Doppler, till that time you can go for the Sprehen test, elevate the testes and check whether the patient is having some relaxation in the symptoms or patient is having aggravation of the symptoms. And the second thing is the cremostatic reflex. It is absent in testicular torsion. Okay. Now on to the next thing to discuss. Okay, this is testicular torsion. About usually the age is young kids or young teens, 10 to 25 years of age. Sudden severe pain, and associated with the severe pain, they may have nausea and vomiting, and associated suprapubic pain sometimes. Physical examination: tender, swollen, red testes, may be slightly high. Prehen sign is negative. Okay, and there is an absent cremostatic reflex. Prehen sign is elevation causes relaxation, but here elevation will cause further twisting and patient will get more pain. Why the patient develops it is because of the congenital, you can say, mal location or mal rotation of this testes. Usually, if you see the first picture, you can see that the testes, the testes have these epididymis and over itself, and then from the side it rises. But if there is a short epididymis, and especially in kids with undescended testes, where you pull the testes down and the testes is not, the epididymis is not of enough length. What happens that testes develop a slight change in its shape, and it is easy to rotate, just like you have a bell in the clapper. When if you see this bell, there is a clapper inside, and this clapper, it is just like testes. You can rotate it very easily because it has enough space to rotate. The same is here. The testis is attached to the epididymis, and it is not having the epididymis coming from its side. It is coming from top. So when it is from the top, you can rotate it very easily. So just like this clapper, the testis, they become you can say free to move, and when they're free to move, they can rotate and torsion can occur. Now, usually in neonates, what we find is extravaginal testicular torsion. The torsion is outside coming from the area which is outside the vaginal wall, this tunica vaginalis. while in the adolescent, it is usually within the intravaginal torsion is usually seen commonly. Now, how to diagnose it after the history and examination? When you are suspecting any of this torsion problem, you have to go for a Doppler test. You can check the Doppler through the Doppler the flow, as well as you can go for a scan and check the testicular blood flow there. So testicular blood flow is normal, means there is no torsion problem. But if the flow is disturbed or there is excessive peripheral flow, the flow is in the periphery, it is not, there is no flow in the center, it gives you an indication that there is some problem and the flow is not going inside the testis itself. So it is a problem with the torsion, and you have to do emergency. Now, the time limit we have is about 6 hours, because if we see such a patient and within 6 hours we derotate it, the testes will remain stable. So the time is very important. That's why a good history and examination is needed, and then urgent investigation. If you don't have the facility for Doppler, you are working in a setup where you don't have the facility for the Doppler, but your clinical examination suggests you go and open it. It will not cause any harm to the patient if you open it. If you don't open it, and if it is a torsion, then the patient will suffer a lot. So better to take care of the time and try to manage the patient within time. So this is a case, you see, if you don't manage it in time, there may be a complete blockage, and there is a complete non-viability of the tissue, and it is necrosed. And then what you have to do is you have to go for orchidectomy. If you see this patient and if you derotate it in time, you have to go for orchidopexy and try to do it bilaterally, so that there are no chances of developing the same problem in the other side. Because if it is present on one side, chances are that the patient may have the same congenital problem in the other side. So better, when you are doing orchidopexy, do bilateral orchidopexy. Okay. Another condition is what I was discussing is testicular appendage torsion. What is testicular appendix? It is an appendage that is located, that is present on the surface of the testis, and it is not significant. It is just a remnant of an obliterated duct. But when sometimes it becomes taut, it becomes twisted, and then patient presented with a sudden severe pain, sudden onset pain, and there may be swelling, but that swelling is localized to one side. It is not the swelling of the whole testis. And when you examine, there is a blue dot sign. You can see the blue dot on one end, and it confirms your diagnosis. Treatment usually, as it is not severe condition, you can keep it conservative. But if the patient is having severe pain, you can explore and you can ligate this appendix. Epididymitis is inflammation of the epididymis, and it is generally due to ascending infection. And presentation is just like as we discussed before. There is severe sudden onset severe scrotal pain and swelling. On physical examination, the scrotum is tender, swollen, it is reddened. There may be extension into the inguinal region also if the infection is expanded. Then Prehen signs is positive. These patients, they have a positive cremostatic reflex. And if you want to differentiate it from hydroceles, they are non-transluminant, and usually we can get above the swelling if it is in the scrotal region. And Doppler ultrasound is it confirms that there is vascularization. There is no need of go for urgent operation, as the blood supply is intact. We don't have to go for it. Okay, treatment. We have to give antibiotics and painkiller NSAIDs, and usually it settles within days. So you don't have to treat it as a surgical emergency and treat it in the operative room. Okay, but the important thing is you should be very clear that it is not a torsion. It is very clear that presentation of both of them, they mimic. So be careful while you are doing the physical examination, while you are taking the history. And if needed, if you are suspecting, go for an ultrasound scan or a Doppler scan. Okay, now we'll go on to another set of swellings, which are cystic swellings. And usually these are because of the collection of fluid or collection of blood around the processus vaginalis in the tunica vaginalis. Hydrocele, it is an abnormal collection of serous fluid in some part of the processus vaginalis, usually the tunica vaginalis. And why it develops? Either there is increased production of the fluid, or there is decreased absorption of the fluid by the scrotal lymphatics. And presentation is painless scrotal swelling. Usually it is painless. Gradual in onset, it is a chronic swelling. It is not an acute swelling, so the onset is usually gradual. And it may change the size. Now, can anyone tell how the hydrocele, which type of hydroceles they change their size? Patient says sometimes it becomes small and sometimes it becomes large. It is persistent, but sometimes it becomes small and sometimes it becomes large. Which type of hydroceles are these which change in size? Anyone? Anyone? Grade level 12, anyone? I don't want to go here and there, otherwise my mouse will create boxes here. So please open your mic, and can anyone tell what do we mean by change in the size?
Do you mean like pitting edema?
La, I'm saying a patient with a scrotal swelling comes to you and gives the history that it is a chronic swelling, and in some postures it is big in size, and in some posture the swelling becomes a bit small. What type of swellings are these that become small in
Congenital hydrocele.
Sorry?
Congenital hydrocele.
Congenital. These all are congenital hydrocele.
There is two types, I think, acquired and congenital.
Which type I'm talking about? I'm talking about among these, there are varieties. I'm talking about the varieties. Which variety causes this? Acquired means they are secondary to something. Secondary means infection, because of some tumor, because of some blockade of the lymphatics. Secondary is acquired. Secondary to some problem is acquired. Congenital means they are present and the problem is in the tunica vaginalis, the fluid is collecting there. That is congenital.
Maybe hernia?
No. Something related to hernia. Communicating hydrocele. A hydrocele that is communicating with the abdominal cavity. Sorry?
If there is a cuff, change in the size?
Yes, communicating hydrocele. Actually, the type of hydrocele is communicating. The hydrocele in which are communicated with the abdominal cavity. Fluid is coming from the abdominal cavity and going to the abdominal cavity. Patient says, when I lie down, when I'm relaxing, the size is a bit small. It is the size is shrink, or it is smaller in its diameter. But when I get up, gradually it becomes bigger. So these are communicating hydroceles. Cystic swellings, they become smaller or bigger depending on the patient's posture. Okay, so sometimes patient give this history that the size changes. In scrotal swellings, usually there is no such problem, but usually in inguinal scrotal swelling or in some communicating hydroceles, they give this history. Now, when we do the physical examination, these are painless, they are non-tender. You can palpate the upper limit. You can get the upper limit just like it is shown in this picture. He's palpating the upper limit. The upper limit is palpable. You cannot palpate the testis separately because on that side, this swelling is arising from the, this swelling is actually the tunica vaginalis that has been expanded. So that is surrounding the testis, and the patient's testis is covered under it. So you cannot palpate the testis separately. TRAS elimination is a very important test that differentiates between hernia and hydrocele, as well as some other conditions also like hematoceles. Same presentation, history of trauma, same swelling, but TRAS elimination is positive in hydrocele, but hematocele, you don't have TRAS elimination. And these are cystic swellings, they are fluctuant. And in cases of non-communicating hydroceles, cuff impulse is negative. In communicating, you may have, but in the majority of the cases are the non-communicating hydroceles, and there the cuff impulse is negative. You can see it on an ultrasound also. Testis is on one side, and the whole outer covering is covered or is filled with the fluid, serous fluid, amber. It's called amber colored fluid. Okay. So normally the tunica vaginalis, the processus vaginalis, it is obliterated. It is an obliterated cord-like structure. But in patients with communicating hydroceles, it remains patent, and there is a communication between the abdominal cavity and the tunica vaginalis. And in the non-communicating hydrocele, there is fluid collection in the tunica vaginalis, but the processus vaginalis is obliterated. Okay, the treatment is dependent on the type. If it is a communicating hydrocele, the treatment is just like we do the treatment of hernia in children. We have to go for an inguinal herniatomy, because if we just take out the hydrocele from down and we evert it and we manage it, there is still things coming from up, and the hydrocele will form again. So for congenital varieties which are communicating, we have to go for an inguinal herniatomy. In the varieties which are non-communicating, and especially in adult varieties, in adults, the acquired varieties or the varieties that are commonly secondary to some problems, they are usually non-communicating. We can have these in children also. There are 4 types in children: vaginal, vaginal hydrocele, communicating hydrocele, hydrocele of the cord, cystic hydrocele. We have 4 varieties in congenital, and out of these, 1 is communicating and the 3 are non-communicating. But in adult, the variety we usually get is a non-communicating variety, and for this we do hydrocelectomy, or we open up the sac, we aspirate all the fluid, and then we evert the covering so that the hydrocele does not form again. We don't just aspirate it and close it. No, we aspirate it and we evert the covering. Evert means like you take like you peel a banana and then you take the covering on one side. Now what will happen because of it? The collection of the fluid that is present there because of any cause, the problem of the lymphatics or problem of the excess production, that problem is still there, but the fluid will not collect in that sac again, because you have opened that sac and you have made it everted. You have made it on the reverse side. Okay, so for adults, the procedures that we usually do, they are Lord's procedure or Jabalise procedures, and in which usually we remove the sac, reduce it, and then evert it. Okay, aspiration, generally when we are doing investigations and we are investigating the patient for some problem, aspiration is contraindicated, because aspiration can damage the thing inside. You don't know what is inside. Maybe there is some communicating hernia is down there, and you damage the hernial the intestinal sac, intestinal loop, or you may damage the testis itself, or you may introduce organism from outside. So as an investigation modality, aspiration is contraindicated. You don't have to do aspiration. There is a legendary picture in one of the book of surgery, Bailey and Love. I told, I think, some of the students yesterday. in which a picture is shown that in centuries ago, for some hydrocele, they tried to aspirate the fluid to take out the fluid from that, and that hydrocele was actually a hydrocele with hernia, and it caused injury to the gut inside. The gut got injured. There is perforation. It got necrosed, and the whole of that hydrocele converted into a you can say a dirty wound because of the spillage of the gut contents, and that hole become necrosed. And you know, these areas, the gangrenes, they usually become polymicrobial, and there's an element of Fournier gangrene also in these patients. So that patient, I don't know what was who was that patient, but it was some legend. I don't know who, but he was a legend, and he suffered this problem and he died because of it. So it's very important that if there is a testicular swelling and you're suspecting hydrocele, even if you're suspecting hydrocele, don't aspirate it. Treat it according to the protocol. What is the protocol? Apply that protocol. Okay. Spermatocele. Spermatocele is a sperm-containing cyst that arises from the head of the epididymis. Presentation is the same. It is gradual onset, painless swelling. And physical examination, it is non-tender. Here you can palpate the testis and you can get above it. Transformation is also positive because the fluid is clear here. The difference between spermatocele and hydrocele is you can palpate the testis separately. The rest things are the same in both the conditions. If it is symptomatic, patient is having severe symptoms, and the swelling is causing dragging sensation and pain in its location, and it is worrisome for the patient, we can offer surgical excision. Usually it does not need any treatment, or if it is confirmed by ultrasound that it is a spermatocele, we can offer aspirations here. But if it is symptomatic or size is increasing and there is suspicion in the aspirate, we can go for surgical excision. There are chances of infertility post-operative. So in the initial phase, we don't offer surgical treatment to the patient. Varicocele is dilatation of the veins in the spermatic cord. You know that there are the tortuous veins, the pampiniform plexus. This plexus, if there is some blockage to the venous drainage, and if there is some increased production and lymphatic obstruction too, patient develops engorged dilated veins. And if you see these varicocele, its appearance is like a bag of worms. When you palpate it, it is like you are palpating a bag full of worms, long, elongated, tortuous worms. So its typical presentation is like a bag of worms, and there is a positive cough impulse because when the patients cough, there is a venous reflux because the venous valves are not active. The blood is not going back. And when the patient coughs, there is a impulse felt when you feel these varicocele or the scrotal swelling. It becomes more on standing, and it becomes, patient says that when I stand up for a prolonged time, its size increases. And when I lie down, the size is a bit reduced, not khalas, it is not ended, but it's reduced in size. So the typical presentation of varicocele is it's dull ache, gradual in onset. Patient may have history that it decreases in lying down position and it increases in standing position, and they may have infertility. They may have a history of infertility. Physical examination, when you palpate the swellings, they are like a bag of worms, like you are feeling a bag full of worms. Cough impulse is positive, and that cough impulse is better to see in the standing position also. Usually we have these varicoceles more on the left side as compared to the right side. This is because of the anatomical variation. of the venous drainage of the right and the left side. The right testicular vein directly enters into the inferior vena cava, and there is no hindrance to the flow of the venous blood there. But the left testicular vein, it enters into the renal vein, which then enters into the inferior vena cava. So at any point, if there is increased flow from the renal side or the suprarenal side, they cause back pressure on the this testicular vein, and the patient develops symptoms of varicocele. It is one of the varicocele development is one of the symptom of renal carcinomas. Patient with renal carcinoma or renal problems, they may have varicocele also, especially on the left side. On the left side, I'm talking. Okay. We have these of different grades. Grade 1, if varicocele is palpable only after Valsalva maneuver. What is Valsalva maneuver? What is Valsalva maneuver? Grade 12. What is Valsalva maneuver? Anyone? You have read it in anatomy, in your pathophysiology, and for pathology. Valsalva maneuver is a way to increase the intra-abdominal pressure, and patient is forced to breathe out against a closed mouth and a closed nostril, and it is used to open the ear cavities also. The patients who are having severe ear pain because of change in the pressure during the flights, they are asked to do this Valsalva maneuver. The same maneuver can help in identifying the varicocele grades. If the patient is having varicocele appearing only after increased intra-abdominal pressure on physical examination, that is a grade 1. If it is palpable without any activity by the patient, it is called grade 2. And if it is visible to the eye and easily palpable, that is called grade 3. Causes can be idiopathic, could be obstruction, but the most important is the incompetent valves. Usually the valves of the veins, they are incompetent, just like we have in the varicose veins. The valves are incompetent and patient develops varicocele. You can see the picture here. Usually the valves cause unilateral flow, and they closes when the blood has flown up. But in cases when the valves are incompetent, when the blood flows up, after that the blood comes down because of the dysfunction of the valves. They let the blood come back, and because of it there is increased pressure within these pemphidiform plexus veins, and there is pooling, and that pooling causes the varicoceles to appear. Okay, when to operate? Patient is having severe dragging pain, and there is a history of infertility, and there is a failure of growth of testes at the puberty because of the extrinsic pressure. So these are the cases in which we offer surgery, but surgery is not 100% successful in managing these symptoms. Treatment is we go for varicocelectomy. Just like we do an appendicectomy, we give an NCN up, and we instead of entering into the abdominal cavity, we go pre-peritoneally, and we reach the testicular vein region, and then we cut these veins. The more down we remain, the more better will be the outcome. Okay, so we can go for angioembolization also. Selectively, we embolize the veins that are enlarged and dilated. Specifically, we can embolize them, and the patient can get rid of the symptoms. Trauma can result in hematocele. Hematocele is blood in that covering of the scrotum of the testes, the tunica vaginalis. Blood in the scrotum, it's called a hematocele. Presentation is a scrotum swelling, scrotal swelling, history of trauma associated with pain. Physical examination, you will have a tender swollen scrotal mass, scrotal swelling, There is a hematoma. You can see the bruising or the signs of trauma on the outer skin. You can get above the swelling, and it does not though it contains fluid, but it cannot trans-illuminate it because inside is blood, and blood is not trans-illuminant. And the cuff impulse is negative here. Treatment is conservative or surgical. If it is severe, if the size is increased, we can offer surgery to the patient. Now hernias are, they may present as inguinal scrotal swelling, especially if they are present for prolonged time. And how to differentiate it from a pure scrotal swelling is you cannot get above the swelling and the swelling can be reduced. These are the two features that differentiate a hernia from a hydrocele. Treatment depends on, you have covered it in the lecture of hernia, so we will not discuss it, but the treatment depends on the presentation. Emergency treatment, if you are suspecting irreducibility or signs of obstruction or strangulation. If it is it is a reducible hernia, still then as early as possible you have to do hernia repair as soon as possible in the coming future. Okay, for elective we have time to prepare the patient here, but in cases when there is irreducibility or obstructive symptoms, then you have to do the operation as early as possible, and in obstruction and strangulation you have to go for an emergency surgery. Now the testicular tumor, they present as a scrotal swelling, and patient may have painless swelling of the scrotal region that is apparently a bit hard. There may be symptoms of metastasis. Usually these are found incidentally. Patient had some trivial trauma and he noticed or palpates his area and he feels some hard mass there, and then he comes to the emergency. So it is very careful if the patient is saying that he is having a trivial trauma, a very mild trauma, but he presents to you with a hard swelling, hard mass, think about of some malignancy which he has picked incidentally, just accidentally because of his trauma. Physical examination, these are non-tender, these are hard, you can get above these are non-trans-illuminant, and the cuff impulse is negative here. Take-home messages, any intratesticular mass that is firm to hard, take it as a cancer unless proven otherwise. Okay, you have to be you have to prove it that this is a benign problem. Unless until you prove it, you can't just say the patient, okay, go home, this is not a problem, you will not have anything. If you are feeling that there is a mass in the testis, it is an intratesticular mass, not a cystic swelling, the intratesticular mass, investigate it properly, and unless it is proven, don't let the patient go anywhere. First confirm it. If it is benign, then advise him whatever you want. But if it is malignancy, you have to be very careful and you have to treat it, stage it, and then treat it accordingly. Again, the important thing is the workup includes ultrasound. We can go for tumor markers, and we go for staging investigations. The investigations are of two types: diagnostic investigations and staging investigations. And ultrasound of the testis and the tumor markers, they are considered as diagnostic investigations, while CT scan and other tests are usually done for staging the disease, to check for the extent of the disease in the local as well as in the remote areas. Now, in these patients in whom you are suspecting malignancy, we go for radical orchidectomy, and this radical orchidectomy is a part of diagnostic investigation. We take out that whole testis and we send it for histopathology. That is must to do the biopsy. We cannot take biopsy from the skin itself. We cannot go for true cut biopsy or go for incisional or excisional biopsy. We have to go for orchidectomy, a proper orchidectomy. Can anyone tell what is the lymphatic drainage of testes? What is the lymphatic drainage of testes? A patient having patient having testicular carcinoma, where do the metastasis to the lymph nodes go? Anyone? Open your mic, please, and tell where do the lymphatics of or the metastasis of testicular carcinoma go? To which lymph nodes?
inguinal lymph node.
MashaAllah. Who is it?
محمد زنكراني.
MashaAllah. Anyone else?
Inguinal also.
Good. Who is this again?
Muhammad Al-Maki.
I will give it in the MCQ, okay? Read it. Anyone else? Any other idea? What-
pelvis دكتورة سعود اليابس.
where are the lymphatics go usually? South?
In the back side of the pelvis.
Back side of the pelvis. Where?
Close. I think I remember it's close to the abdominal aorta and in the same line.
Allah.
I think
What is the blood
Bone.
supply of testes?
Bone or liver or kidney?
I'm asking lymphatic drainage. What is the blood supply of testes? What is the blood supply of testes?
testicular
that?
artery.
Testicular artery. Who is this? MashaAllah.
محمد زنكراني يا دكتورة. I am
Zankarani.
very good student.
Now, very good student. Now tell me from where this testicular artery is coming? Good
من
student.
mesenteric.
Mesenteric.
mesenteric lymph node يا دكتورة الميتاستس.
It is coming directly from aorta. Why mesenteric?
لا أنا I mean the metastasis go to mesenteric lymph node and inguinal.
Brother, it is coming from aorta, so it will go directly to aorta. Why it will go to the mesentery and travel here and there? Now, this is a very important question, and I was shocked when I see the result last year, students. Every student, just like you are saying, everyone said it wrong. Testes are supplied by testicular artery, which is a direct branch from the aorta. And we say that whatever is the arterial supply, the corresponding is the venous drainage and corresponding is the lymphatic drainage. It takes supply from aorta. It goes into inferior vena cava. Just before I told you about varicocele, the things are going into the inferior vena cava directly. And the lymphatics, they go along the same pathway. They go in the para-aortic lymph nodes. Testicular carcinomas itself lymphatic drainages to the para-aortic lymph nodes, not to the inguinal. Inguinal lymph nodes, they are supplying the outer skin. So that's why I was saying we don't resect the tumor to get a biopsy. We don't do true cut biopsy. We don't do the percutaneous biopsies. Why? Because what we are doing, we are entering the testis from the skin, and we are seeding the tumor cells from the testis into the skin. And now the lymphatic supply of the skin will take these tumor cells to the inguinal lymph node. So you are actually spreading the tumor if you take a biopsy from there. Understand? So what is the
Yes, doctor.
lymphatic
So
drainage
the location is the back of the pelvis near the aorta and the vena cava, right?
Yes, it is. Say the exact name. These are the para-aortic lymph nodes. Back of the pelvis, a lot of. Where is the aorta ending? Is the aorta reaching till the pelvis? Aorta does not reach the pelvis. Okay. Aorta is just at the level of your umbilicus, slightly below your umbilicus. Aorta ends. So talk about you're right that they are going to the, you can say to the posterior part of the abdominal cavity, but that is para-aortic lymph node that you should say. The specific nodes are the para-aortic lymph nodes. There is no posterior plexus there. So the lymphatic drainage of testes is para-aortic lymph nodes because the blood supplies from the aorta directly. Okay. So in patients, we do orchidectomy 2-stage because when we do the orchidectomy, we cannot take the biopsy by any mean. So for histopathological staging, for the T size of the tumor or the T of the tumor, size as well as the invasion status, we have to go for orchidectomy. Orchidectomy is a staging investigation. Okay, so in any case, if we are suspecting a testicular malignancy, you have to go for a radical orchidectomy of the affected site. And this is for a sort of staging investigation. You stage the disease by doing this procedure, and then we send it for histopathology to identify the histopathological grading of that tumor. Now you can remember this now. There is a big cross to biopsy. We don't biopsy the testicular tumors. Okay. Fournier's gangrene, we discussed it before also. Actually, not with you, with level 10. Fournier's gangrene is necrotizing fasciitis of the deep subcutaneous deep cutaneous structures and fascia. It goes till the deep fascia level. Presentation is usually painful, necrotic, foul-smelling discharge from an ulcerative swelling or ulcerative lesion of the scrotum. And physical examination, important feature is there is crepitations because of the collection of air or the gas inside. There is crepitation. It is diagnostic for these. There are two conditions, two types of gangrene usually in which we have these crepitation. One is the gas gangrene, which is because of the Clostridium perfringens, and second is this necrotizing fasciitis, which is usually because of it can be polymicrobial in origin, and it's very common in diabetic patients. And the hallmark of these are that when you are feeling it, you will feel crepitations there. And the necrotizing fasciitis of the perianal region is called Fournier's gangrene. Okay, this is the name, specific name given to these gangrenes. If you come across such patient, there should be no delay in treatment. If you're suspecting necrotizing fasciitis, you have to do a thorough debridement. You have to take all the skin and the subcutaneous tissue from there till the deep fascia. You have to remove each and every infected necrotic part. And then we give a broad spectrum antibiotic because usually it is a polymicrobial infection. And finally, when the patient starts recovering and the infection is getting subsided, we can go for packing, and we do secondary closure. We just let the wound heal by secondary closure. The wound heals by itself. We don't do any suturing, anything like that. We just keep it open. And this is all about the scrotal swellings. Any question regarding these? We discussed some part of it in yesterday's lecture. We discussed the difference between epididymitis and testicular torsion with M1. I missed it in with M2. Can anyone of M1 repeat how we can differentiate a testicular torsion and epididymitis? Just to review, we have discussed it again, but just to review because that thing was missed yesterday. Anyone of M1?
Yes, Doctora. For the torsion, it's going to be the testicle will be raised and horizontal.
Mm-hmm.
And for the and the pain will be more in torsion. So when you raise the scrotum, it's going to be painful.
Yes, this is Prehan sign. Pain is more in both. Pain is very severe, but when we elevate in patients with epididymitis, they feel some relaxation. The pain is decreased, and it is called a positive Prehan sign. But in cases of testicular torsion, when we elevate the scrotum, the twisting becomes more, and patient develops more agony and more pain. So in patients with testicular torsion, we have a negative Prehan sign, and in patients of epididymitis, we have a positive Prehan sign. One more difference is the cremostatic reflex. Cremostatic reflex is positive in the epididymitis, while it is absent in patients with testicular torsion. Okay, any question about this lecture? Any question?
شكرا دكتور. Thank you. Easy,
Okay.
simple, clear.
Okay, we will take a short break of about 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes, and then we will start the next lecture. Okay, you can take a cup of tea if you want.
كافي يا دكتور. دكتورة,
Hmm.
I talked to Dr. Tamer Treki. He will give us the lecture on Zoom, not